Cool was Max and logical. Keen, calculating, acute and astute. He was all of these. His brain was as powerful as a dynamo, as precise as a chemist's scales, as penetrating as a scalpel. It is not often that one so young has such a great intellect. Take, for example, his roommate at the university, Petey Bellows. Petey Bellows was a nice enough fellow, you'd understand, but nothing upstairs. Emotional, impressionable, worst of all, a faddist. Fads, as Max believed, were the very negation of reason. One day, Max found Petey lying on his bed with a look of such anguish on his face.
Appendicitis. Don't move. Don't take a laxative.
Raccoon.
Raccoon?
Oh, raccoon. I want a raccoon coat.
Why do you want a raccoon coat?
I should have known they came back when the Charleston came back. I spent all my money on textbooks and now I can't buy a raccoon coat.
Petey, why do you want a raccoon coat?
All the big men on campus are wearing them. Where have you been?
In the library.
I've got to have a raccoon coat.
Petey, why? Look at it rationally. Raccoon coats are unsanitary. They smell bad. They're unsightly. They weigh too much.
You don't understand. It's the thing to do. I'd give anything for a raccoon coat. Anything.
Max's brain, that precision instrument, slipped into high gear.
Anything?
Anything.
Max stroked his chin thoughtfully. It so happened that he knew where to get his hands on a raccoon coat. His father had had one once in his undergraduate days. It lay now in a trunk in the attic back home. It also happened that Petey had something he wanted. I refer to his girl, Polly Espy. Let me emphasize that his desire for this young woman was not emotional in any nature. He wanted Polly for a shrewdly calculated, entirely cerebral reason. He was in law school and well aware of the importance of the right kind of wife in furthering a lawyer's career. The successful lawyers were married to beautiful, gracious, intelligent women. With one omission, Polly fitted these specifications perfectly. Beautiful she was, gracious she was. She had an erectness of carriage, an ease of bearing, a poise that clearly indicated the best of breeding. At the table, her manners were exquisite. Intelligent, she was not. In fact, she veered in the opposite direction. But Max believed that under his guidance she would smarten up. It is, after all, easier to make a beautiful dumb girl smart than an ugly smart girl beautiful.
Petey, are you in love with Polly Espy?
No, I think she's a keen kid, but I don't know if you call it love. Why?
Do you have any formal arrangement with her? I mean, are you going steady with her or anything like that?
No, why?
Is there any other man that she has a particular fondness?
Nada.
In other words, if you're out of the picture, the field would be open. Is that right?
Sure, I guess. Why? Where are you going?
Home for the weekend. Bye. Hey.
Hi. Wowie, 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 wowie!
Would you like it?
Yes. What do you want for it?
I would like your girl.
You want Polly?
That's right.
No.
That's fine. Your loss.
Max sat down in a chair and pretended to read a book. But out of the corner of his eye, he kept watching Petey. Petey was a torn man. First, he looked at the coat with the expression of a waif at the bakery window. Then he turned away and set his jaw resolutely. Then he looked back at the coat, with even more longing in his face. Back and forth his head swiveled. Resolution waning, desire waxing. Finally, he didn't turn away at all. He just stared with mad lust at the coat.
It's not like Polly and I were going out or anything like that.
That's right. Try the coat.
It's fine.
Is it a deal?
It's a deal.
Max had his first date with Polly the following evening. He wanted to see just how much he had to work on her to get her brain up to the standard he required. He took her first to dinner.
a delish dinner.
Then he took her to a movie.
Gee, that was a Marvy movie.
Max went back to his room with a heavy heart. He had gravely underestimated the size of his task. Pally's lack of information was terrifying, nor would it be enough to merely supply her with information. First, she had to be taught to think. He went about it, as in all things, systematically. He gave her a course in logic. It happened that Max, as a law student, was taking a course in logic, so he had all the tools at his fingertips.
What are we going to talk about?
Logic.
Ooh.
Logic is the science of thinking. Before you can think correctly, you must first learn to acknowledge the common fallacies of logic.
Magnif.
First, let us examine sweeping generalization.
By all means.
Sweeping generalization is a fallacy that overextends a generalization to include cases that are exceptions to it. For instance, exercise is good for everybody, therefore it must be good for me.
I know. Exercise is wonderful. It really builds the body and everything.
Polly, the argument is a fallacy. Exercise is good is an overextended generalization. For instance, if you have heart disease, exercise is bad, not good. You must qualify the generalization. You must say, exercise is usually good, or exercise is good for most people. Otherwise, you have committed a sweeping generalization fallacy. Do you see?
No, but this is Marvy. Do more.
Next, let us examine hasty generalization. Listen closely. You can't speak French. Bernard Calloway can't speak French.
I can't speak French.
Therefore, I conclude that nobody at the University of Minnesota can speak French.
Really? Nobody?
Polly, the argument is a fallacy. The generalization is reached too hastily. There are too few examples to support such a conclusion.
Know any more fallacies?
Next, we'll examine a fallacy called false cause. Let's not take Bill on our picnic. Every time we take him out with us, it rains.
I know a girl just like that back home. Eula Beckert was her name. It never fails. Every time we take her on a picnic.
Polly, it's a fallacy. Eula Beckert does not cause the rain. She has no connection with the rain. You are guilty of a false cause if you blame Eula Beckert.
I'll never do it again. Are you mad at me?
No, Polly, I'm not mad.
Then tell me more fallacies.
I think we better call it a night. I'll take you home. You can go over the things you've learned.
He deposited her at the girls' dormitory, where she assured him that she had a perfectly terrific evening, and he went glumly home to his room. Petey lay snoring in his bed, clinging to the raccoon coat like a life preserver. The next evening, Max continued to pour some logic into Polly's pretty and dull head. Seated under the tree the next evening...
Our first fallacy tonight is called appeal to pity. Listen closely. A man applies for a job. The boss asks him what his qualifications are. The man replies he has a wife and 6 children at home. The children have nothing to eat, no shoes on their feet. The wife is a helpless cripple, and there are no beds in the house, and winter is coming.
This is awful.
Yes, it is awful, but it's no argument. The man never answered the boss's questions about his qualifications. Instead, he replied to the boss's sympathy.
Do you have a handkerchief?
No, I do not have a handkerchief. Okay, next fallacy is false analogy. Here's an example. I think students should be allowed to look at their textbooks during an examination. After all, surgeons have x-rays during a procedure, and carpenters have blueprints when they're building a house. Why then shouldn't students be allowed to use their textbooks during an examination?
Now that there is the most Marvy idea I have heard in years.
Polly, the argument is all wrong. Doctors and carpenters aren't taking a test to see how much they've learned, but students are. The situation altogether is different. You can't make an analogy between them.
I still think it's a good idea.
Okay, the next fallacy is called ad hominem abusive.
How cute.
2 men are having a debate. First one gets up and says, "My opponent is a notorious liar. You can't believe a word he is going to say." Now listen closely. Now, just be careful. What's wrong?
Max watched her closely as she knit her creamy brow in concentration. Suddenly, a glimmer of intelligence, the first he had seen.
It's not fair. It's not a bit fair. What chance has the other man got if the other man calls him a liar before he even starts talking?
Correct. 100% correct. Hallelujah! There's still hope for you.
Heartened by the knowledge that Polly was not altogether a dunce, Max began a long, patient review of all he had told her. Over and over and over again, he cited instances, pointed out flaws, kept hammering away without let-up. It was like digging a tunnel. At first, everything was work, sweat, and darkness. He had no idea when he would reach the light, or even if he would. But Max persisted. He pounded and clawed and scraped, and finally he was rewarded. Max saw a chink of light, and then the chink got bigger, and the sun came pouring in, and all was bright. 5 grueling nights with this it took, but it was worth it. Max had made a logician out of Polly. Max's job was done. She was worthy of him at last. She was a fit wife for him, a proper hostess for his many mansions, and a suitable mother for his wealthy children. It must not be thought that Max was without love for this girl. Quite the contrary. Max decided to acquaint her with his feelings at their very next meeting. The time had come to change their relationship from academic to romantic.
Polly, tonight we will not discuss fallacies.
Oh, man.
Polly, we have now spent 5 evenings together. We have gotten along splendidly. It is clear that we are well matched.
Hasty generalization. Hasty generalization. How can you say that we are well matched on the basis of only 5 evenings?
My dear, 5 evenings is plenty. After all, you don't have to eat the whole cake to know it's good.
False analogy. I'm not a cake. I'm a girl.
Max chuckled with somewhat less amusement. The dear child had learned her lessons perhaps a little too well. He decided to change tactics. Obviously, the best approach was a simple, strong, direct declaration of love. Max paused for a moment while his massive brain chose the proper words.
Polly, I love you. You are the whole world to me, the moon and the stars, the constellations of outer space. Please, my darling, say that you will go steady with me, for if you not, I will languish, I refuse my meals, I will wander the face of the earth, a shambling, hollow and Hulk.
I feel the pity.
Well, Polly, I've certainly learned your fallacies.
You're darn right.
And who taught them to you, Polly?
You did.
That's right, so you owe me something, don't you? If I have never come along, you have never learned Ireland's fallacies.
You don't know that. That's a hypothesis you cannot assume.
Polly, you mustn't take these things so literally. It's just classroom stuff. You know, anything you do in school doesn't have anything to do with real life.
Sweeping generalization.
Will you, or will you not, go steady with me?
I will not.
Why not?
Because this morning I already promised Petey Bellows that I'd go steady with him.
Max reeled back, overcome with the infamy of it. After he had made a deal, after he had promised, after Petey had shook his hand.
He's a rat, Polly. You can't go with him. He's a liar. He's a cheat. He's a rat.
Ad hominem abuse him. Stop shouting. I think shouting must be a fallacy too.
All right, you're a logician. Let's look at this logically. Look at me, a brilliant intellectual, a tremendous student, a man with an assured future. Look at Petey Bellows, a liar, a jitterbug, a guy who will never know where his next meal is coming from. How can you choose Petey Bellows over me?
He's got a raccoon coat.